All right, so we're talking about the Epstein Files, and this time an arrest has been made in Britain that has almost not happened for nearly 400 years. The king's younger brother has been arrested, and if this case moves forward, then the king's justice system will prosecute the king's brother. It's an unprecedented moment because the last time a senior member of the British royal family was arrested was over 350 years ago. Andrew is the younger brother of King Charles III. He was arrested on Thursday on suspicion of misconduct in public office. He was held for about 11 hours, questioned, searched, photographed, fingerprinted like anybody else, and then released under investigation. In this video, we're going to talk about all of the accusations against him, the evidence that has emerged, and how the Epstein Files triggered this moment. Of course, the Epstein Files is a grotesque gift that keeps on giving, and that's why we're still talking about it. So remember, like, share, subscribe, send us a comment in the comment section. It would really help us out. And if you can, and if you're so inclined, please sign up for our membership. It will help us, or it'll support us financially. Okay, so on Thursday, the UK police arrested Andrew Mountbatten Windsor from the Sandringham estate in Norfolk. The police did not name the suspect, but said that he was 66 years old. Apparently, that's the protocol they follow in the UK for everybody. It was also his birthday, from what we understand. And according to the police, he was arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office. And then he was released. So he has not been charged and he has not been exonerated either. And he was photographed leaving the police station about 11 hours after his arrest. Now, who is Andrew? He's the third child and the second son of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip. And it was apparently widely accepted in those royal circles that he was the Queen's favorite. He served the Royal Navy for 22 years. He flew helicopters at that time between 2001 and 2011. He also served as the UK's Special Trade Envoy, which basically is a role meant to promote British business interests overseas. And it is that role, not his royal status, that now lies at the heart of this investigation that we're now talking about. Also, remember I told you this has not happened for 350 years. So back in 1649, King Charles I was arrested and later executed. And this is the second case after that. So Andrew may no longer hold any royal titles, but he remains eighth in line for the throne and until recently, was living in royal residences. Now, legal experts and historians say that this arrest is a constitutional shock because royal protocol, or what happens with the royal family, is not something that comes out of the constitution per se. That protocol is unwritten. And senior members of the royal family are normally kept at a careful distance from formal criminal procedures during any scandal. And this is not legal immunity, but it's called institutional isolation. It's designed to protect the monarchy's symbolic authority. Now, Prince Andrew benefited from this protection when the Queen was around, when his mother was the Queen, because despite a lot of controversy against him with regard to Jeffrey Epstein, the Queen apparently privately supported him, allowed him to remain in royal residences, funded his legal settlement, and ensured basically disciplinary action in that case was a stepping back of roles rather than any actual punishment. That has now changed now that his mother is no longer the Queen. Under King Charles III, that buffer has collapsed. He's been stripped of his titles, removed from royal property, publicly distanced from the crown, and obviously now not shielded from police action. And the shift is marking a very decisive change from the Queen's era to the current King's era, signaling that they want to protect that institution even at the cost of the brother going to jail. Now let's examine why he's going to jail, right? So Andrew first became friends with Jeffrey Epstein apparently in the early 2000s. Andrew met Epstein through Ghislaine Maxwell, who was Epstein's partner and his girlfriend, and later became one of Epstein's closest associates. Now, that Ghislaine Maxwell was, convicted in the United States for sex trafficking. At that time, when they met, Epstein was a wealthy financier with connections in political, business, and royal circles, and his conduct was not yet public. Now, the relationship continued even after 2008 when Epstein pled guilty for soliciting a minor for prostitution and served a short jail sentence. So Andrew remained friends with him even after that. And despite this conviction, there were photographs of Andrew and Epstein together, including one particularly damaging visual of them in 2010 walking through New York Central Park. The photograph was taken after Epstein had served time in prison, and it basically became a symbol of Andrew's failure to distance himself from Jeffrey Epstein. And the controversy became much worse in 2014 when a woman called Virginia Giuffre publicly alleged that she had been trafficked by Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell when she was 16 and 17 years old, and on three separate occasions was forced to have sex with Andrew while she was still a minor. Giuffre said these encounters took place in London, in New York, and on Epstein's private island, and she gave very specific details about the fact that she met him, the dates that she met him on, how she met him. There was a photograph again that emerged of the two of them. She talked about how he was sweating profusely when they danced at the island. And Andrew consistently denied those allegations, not very convincingly, though. In November 2019, he gave an infamous interview to BBC's Newsnight where he basically said, in the face of that photograph, that he has absolutely no recollection of meeting Giuffre at all, that he had never, he doesn't remember this photograph. So he didn't say that it was doctored or, that it was not a real photograph. He just said, I can't remember anything. I don't remember anything. And that interview was particularly bad. Also because he said that, to the remark about the fact that he was sweating profusely, he said that he has a medical condition that makes him incapable of sweating at that time. And it was widely ridiculed, and it was seen, this interview was a PR disaster, and the immense backlash that came from that interview really hurt him. After that interview, he stepped back from royal duties. In 2021, Giuffre filed a civil lawsuit in New York, and the case was settled out of court with an undisclosed sum of money. Andrew making that financial settlement, which again, a grapevine says that the Queen funded for him, without admitting any liability. Following that settlement, he was stripped of his military titles and his royal patronages, and but at the same time, I must point out that these allegations never went to criminal court, and so he was never convicted, and it was never examined by a criminal court. And despite that settlement, Virginia Giuffre continued to speak publicly about the trauma that she had encountered. Her family and her lawyers say that she had suffered tremendous psychological harm. And in 2023, in April, she was found dead in her home in Australia. The police ruled that she had died by suicide. She was 41 years old. And her death has not been linked to either Epstein or Andrew in any particular way, but it again raised questions about the lack of accountability of everything that had happened in these cases. Now, let's take a look at why Andrew has been arrested now. The newly released Epstein Files from the US Department of Justice that has just been released include, among other things, email exchanges between Andrew and Epstein, in which he has shared confidential British government trade reports and commercial information with Epstein and his associates. Apparently, in some cases, he has forwarded these confidential reports almost immediately after he received them. There are details about investment opportunities that have been shared, messages discussing sensitive financial details of companies like the Royal Bank of Scotland and Aston Martin. Remember, trade envoys are bound by confidentiality, so sharing new information with a private individual, whether or not they are sex offenders, is treated as misconduct of public office, and that is what he is being arrested for now. I just want to, as a sidestep, apart from the misconduct in public office, there was more evidence of the fact that Andrew stayed in touch with Epstein well after that conviction, even though he said he was no longer in touch. There were private dinners, there were business introductions, there were meetings, and so there's a lot of evidence there. There was new photography about his social proximity with Epstein, photographs of him at dinners, at meetings, on the carpet, or leaning over a young woman. None of these, like I've said repeatedly, as evidence of any crime being committed, but they really add context and raise questions to what is really going on. So the all of the documents that have come out now, in addition to the official correspondence, it shows that Epstein was arranging travel for women to meet Andrew. That emails dating from 2011 onwards suggest Andrew was trying to manage his public narratives about what's happening with Epstein and Maxwell. And all of this is just really icky, quite frankly. But it is the misconduct in public office that has really gotten him into trouble. Because according to the Crown Prosecution Service, which prosecutes in the name of the king, if the accused is a public officer, there was a willful abuse of power, the act was done knowing that it was wrong, and there's reasonable justification, then it qualifies for misconduct in public office. So at the same time, the king has issued a statement, and again, it's rare. Remember, the British royal family has a motto that is never complain, never explain. So normally they deal with most scandals in silence. But the king actually put out a statement, and apparently, he learned of this news, it says, with deepest concern. And he stressed that the law must take its course. And he pledged the palace's full cooperation to the investigators and made no reference to Andrew as his brother at all. Royal watchers saying this is a deliberate effort to separate family loyalty from the institution's survival. And we're going to come to that in a little bit, but we've seen that there has been a far greater political fallout in the UK about the Epstein files than there has been in the US. So senior officers have stepped down, appointments are under scrutiny, police have opened investigation. It's likely the police will now analyze all of the documents to do with Andrew. They will seek unredacted files from US authorities. They will, most likely prosecute. And the interesting thing about that prosecution, the way cases are filed and named in the UK, it will be R versus Mountbatten Windsor. So in plain English, it will be the king versus the king's brother. And that will be unusual. The thing about the British royal family is that after the Queen passed away and King Charles King Charles became king, there was a change of mood in that country because the Queen had almost become a institution in herself. So she was holding a lot of respect. She was holding a lot of respect for the entire. She had become a symbol of the country more than an individual, like an individual human being. She had become an institution. So, for example, they respected her like we respect the RBI or the Supreme Court, like that. She'd become an institution. When she was gone, people started looking at the royal family completely differently. Remember, for a country like the UK, whenever the country goes through an economic hard patch, they look at the royal family and start considering how much money is spent in the upkeep of these people who don't show themselves to be any better than, and in many cases much worse than the average individual. So it's a serious institutional test that has happened now when it comes to Andrew. And King Charles, the stakes for him are particularly high because he's relatively early in his term or his reign, as they call it. And he needs to show that he's serious and that, he takes this seriously and he's not shielding his brother. So one argument is, of course, that this has raised before the eyes of the British public the whole idea of elite unaccountability, that basically I'm royal family, I'm rich, I don't have to be accountable to anybody, I can do whatever the hell I want with whomever I want. But on the other side of the argument is that the fact that he is not being shielded is showing that the monarchy is proving that it is subject to the same legal standards as anyone else. But, all of that set aside, and whatever happens to the royal family or doesn't happen to the royal family, that aside, I do want to point out one thing here. I found it really interesting that the arrest happened because of misuse of power and not because of the sexual abuse, not because of the trafficking of underaged girls, the abuse of power. So for the women who have the thousands of statements that have been received publicly where women have come out and accused Epstein of abuse and trafficking, and then they saw him die before his trial, so he never really faced those accusations. Ghislaine Maxwell is convicted, but many, many powerful names, men who have been associated, have faced no criminal consequence at all. And that is why it is so jarring that this one arrest that we are actually seeing has nothing to do with sexual abuse. It has to do with, with sensitive documents. It's almost as if all over the world, political and financial documents are taken more seriously than allegations of harm to children, because no police has moved on the allegations of harm to children, and we're still standing around waiting. And the the thing about global politics is that it's normally 98% of the point that time global politics is run by men. Wars and conflict invariably hurt women. I mean, look at the world right now. Gaza, Sudan, Afghanistan, where the Taliban has just made it legal to beat your wife. They're denied, women are girls in Afghanistan are denied education, they're denied safety, they're denied any sort of agency. And the whole world is watching quietly as women and children suffer at the hands of powerful men who feel they can do whatever they want. And in this case, powerful men, white men in the West who run the world, are getting away with doing the same thing. What is the difference between the men in the Epstein Files and the Taliban in Afghanistan?